welcome to Scrappin with Sheri. Have you ever done something that you were just so proud of and then you realized that you totally messed it up without even knowing about it? Well, that's kind of how sketch page 20 is in my world. I did a great video showing you my page layout for sketch page 20 and got all the way through it, sent it to my daughter, and she texted me later and said, "Hey Mom, these were still photos." So instead of hitting the photo to video, I just was taking still shots of my picture, but I went through the whole video, or the whole layout, so you will see a picture of that layout also at the end of this video. But since we're still in Christmas, I decided to redo it as a Christmas page, and we're just going to get to it. Now, strangely enough, I am actually using the Welcome Home collection, which is what they used in this this particular layout that they did. I'm using this green leafy, that's got some brown kind of mottled dots on it. It's got like a lattice work on the back. I'm using a blue stripe, and then I pulled out a piece of navy cardstock and a piece of the bronze shimmer cardstock to work with as well. Now, this one is a pretty straightforward layout. I am going to do this as a one-pager, and the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and cut down these papers that layer here at the top. So I've chosen the green as my background, but maybe I need to show you the picture I'm working with. Now, this is actually a nativity that is set up at our church, and I haven't figured out yet. I may make this a 5x7, but I want to talk you through the process. If I make this a 5x7, it may only be one picture on the page, but I do love the decorations at our church, so quite honestly, it's probably going to be more than one picture on the page. But when I was looking at papers, this Welcome Home collection, this stripe perfectly mimics the curtains behind it. This mottled is just going to give us some contrast between these two, and I loved having the greenery on the background. So that's why I chose these particular colors. Not necessarily what we would think of for Christmas, but they work really well with my pictures. So green will be my background. I'm not going to cut that at all. But my second box inside there is measuring at 11.5 by 9.5. And that's what I'm going to cut this white with. So 11.5 by 9.5. That means I only need to cut a 1/2 inch off one side. I'm just going to do that right there instead of flipping everything all the way around. And then 9.5 means I need to cut off 2.5 inches this way. And I'm going to do that here. Now, to do 9.5 by 11.5, I could always extend the arm and use it that way. But when I don't have to extend the arm, I typically don't. So 9.5, 12 minus 9.5 would be 2.5. I'm just using all this math right here. I know that's impressive to you. So that one is finished. And then the one that's going to go on top, now this one is more directional, so I'm really going to have to pay better attention to this one. This one is going to be 11 by 9. So I need my 11 going this way, which means I need to cut off 1 inch from my 12-inch paper to make this 11. And then 9 inches this way, so I need to cut off 3 inches off the 12-inch paper to make this a 9. And I'm going to go ahead and tape these down just because I feel like once I have that taped down, it's going to give me a better idea of where I'm headed. And if you'll notice on the sketch, these are taped just with even spacing around the top and sides. So that's what I'm going to do as well. I'm just going to line these up. And again, you know, you can always measure this if you feel the need to measure. Because I'm doing this initially as a one-pager, I think it'll be a lot easier to follow if I need to go ahead and do it as a two-pager. I can always use what I've cut off here to make a border on the opposite side rather than doing this same design exactly. So I'll keep those leftover pieces with this page until I actually get it in my album and I see what needs to go across from it. All right. So that part is done, and basically all we have to do around on the bottom now is add a border. Now it shows us that we have a 1 3/4 border that's cut here, but I think my border punch is going to be a little bit wider than what they used, so I'm going to kind of work backwards on that. Now I chose the Nativity border punch. This is one that we've had for quite a while, but I'm going to use it with this bronze shimmer cardstock. Now remember, when you're doing a border punch, you line up on one of the black lines that's on the front of the punch. It can be either side, doesn't really matter, but you make your first punch and then you just scoop down and you cover the blue space with your paper. So if your blue is showing underneath, you're not in the right place. And I'm just sliding and punching until I get to the end of this paper. And I'll cut this off and then just see how much it measures. But we're finished with the border punch even. Now, their border area itself was about a 1.5 inch. And this punch is a little bit bigger than 1.5 inches even by itself with nothing behind it. So I'm going to get it as close to 1.5 as I can without cutting off anything. Now I've still got a couple of little glitchy things that I'm working with here, just pulling those little edges off. But we need that border behind this to really make this stand out. And I think I'm going to do that in navy. So let me pull a piece of navy. I felt like the navy would just really make this pop. My initial thought was I really wanted to do this with the platinum shimmer because I love the silver look, but my photo just didn't really lend itself well to a silvery look. There's just more browns and beiges in here. So I felt like this bronze shimmer worked a little bit better. Now, their cut was 1 3/4. If I line my navy paper up to the edge here, and I scoop my border right up to the edge, I'm going to see if I can get a 1 3/4 out of this. Because I would like to make the cuts as close to theirs as possible. Yeah, that's going to work. So 1 3/4 is pretty much right to the edge of your trimmer here. And I'm going to cut that. This page is coming together really quickly. Let me pull my blue mat and stick this border down using my repositionable tape for it. If you'll notice, I'm not covering every little speck of it because it will be page protected as soon as I finish this album. So I'm not really worried about lots of edges flying up. I do want it to stick, but I'm not necessarily real concerned. Now I'm going to center this top to bottom, leaving about the same space here as I leave at the top of the star. And there again, it's probably not exact, but real close. All right. So we've got that border to go here. And they've actually added another border along the top. I don't really feel like I need that per se. What I am looking at is whether I want a little bit of this white to separate my navy from the green, or whether I want to add. I don't really like that. I was thinking I might use that. Let me look at this white strip I cut off and just see if that would be appropriate to really separate this out. Yes, that's really going to make that pop. So, this one's not quite full length. Let's see how good we're feeling today. Let's pull back out our 12-inch trimmer and see if we can split hairs with this. We're going to split this little piece. And I'm actually going to add a little repositionable tape to this because it is so thin. I'm going to have a really hard time splitting that. I don't even care if it's split perfectly exact, but I do need 2 pieces when I get through. And I need 2 usable pieces. So, a little bit of repo tape. Start cutting in the middle and slide up and then slide down. And that gives you a much better cut. And then I'll show you how I'm going to put this onto my page. Probably not the traditional way. I know that's a straight edge there. I know this is a straight edge here. So I'm going to be working with my straight edges that were straight before I made this last cut. And I'm going to run my tape runner down through there. And I'm going to line this up just along the bottom edge of this. I'm going to leave a little bit of green showing. And again, my straight edge is along the bottom. I can tell that one is not exactly straight there. And then watch this. Because this one is so tiny, and I'm worried about trying to stick it onto the paper in the right spot, I'm going to run my repositionable tape along this. And it's right on the part that's going to be showing, but I'm doing that so I can just line up this navy on top of that. Of course, it's sticking to my hand, but what I'm trying to do is just get this on there evenly. Straight edges on top of this one. And I'm trying to make sure my spacing is even along the edge of this navy border. Now, there's still some sticky there, but it's easy enough to rub off that sticky. And as I'm rubbing, I can feel it just moving away. So we've got the white straight edge there. And then we're just going to tape this border down to this, leaving equal spacing. Now, y'all know already my brain works in crazy ways, but that's what works for me. You may find an easier way to do that, but that worked. And then all I have to do is add this onto the border we had already stuck down. And here again, I'm trying to even out spacing on the white border on the bottom and on this green part we've got going here. And that's pretty good. And one thing you may notice is this border is hanging off the edge of my page. I have found that the navy cardstock almost always is longer than the 12-inch pages. So typically I have to cut off a little navy cardstock if I use it as a border. And I'm just going to slice that off. All right. Now, even though I have a picture that I started from on this, I'm not going to tape the picture on yet because I feel like there are going to be other photos I will add to that. But look at my photo against this blue paper. Although the colors are great, the photo just sinks into the blue, and we really need some contrast. Now, I had a piece of vellum left from another collection, and my first thought was, well, I could just put this on a little vellum, and that's pretty. But I also felt like maybe because this is so important, I might want to double mat this. And I'm thinking I would do this in the bronze. So let's just go ahead and cut this down. Now, there are several tricks to vellum. You do have to make good, quick, clean cuts with vellum. If you slice really slowly, and sometimes even if you slice it on your 12-inch trimmer and you're not quick about it, you'll get some jaggedy edges. Vellum just seems to do that sometimes. So quick, clean cuts work best with vellum. You don't need a lot of vellum to make an impact. And I really didn't want to go stark white on that because I felt like it would just be a little bit too much. But I do like that vellum look. And I'm going to cut this down. Now, when I'm cutting it, I'm cutting this way because I want to leave this 12-inch length in case I want to do another border later. So I'm just going to lay this on here with about the spacing I want and cut. Now, this gives me plenty of that shimmer to use later if I need to make a border on the facing page. And then I'm going to go ahead and tape this down. Now, when taping onto vellum, the best thing to me is to put the tape on my picture and then lay the picture onto the vellum. Let me put it on this blue background so you can see the contrast better. So I'm centering this on my vellum. Sort of centering this on my vellum. I'm trying anyway. And then my piece that's going behind, let me go ahead and finish cutting that off, and then I'll show you how to do that. Now, just as an aside, Creative Memories does have vellum tape, and if you have vellums that you're working with, the vellum tape does reasonably well, but it's not always necessary to have vellum tape, because here I'm just going to make sure that my tape is where the picture is, so that when I lay it down, there's no tape sticking out around the outside edges of the vellum, so you can't see the tape. And that was my goal, was to keep the tape inside the borders of the back of this picture. Now here again, because I am probably going to add pictures here, I'm not going to go ahead and tape this yet. But you can see this was a really easy layout. Just use this border punch, which worked out really well. But we've got the layers here, which I love. You could have cut out the inside of the layer, that center layer, or even the inside of the green if you wanted to. I didn't want to do that today. Seems like an extra step to me. But here is layout page 20. You'll also see a different layout of it that I also did using page 20, where I flipped the border and put it on the top of the page instead of the bottom. So page 20 is done, and Christmas is almost here. Until next time, happy scrapping.